Hello and welcome to today's session. I hope you're all doing amazingly well from whichever part of the world you're watching. Today, in my Wellness and Hospitality interview, I am chatting to someone incredibly interesting. You must watch all her work, all the things that she does on LinkedIn. She is amazing. Kate Sotsenko, thank you so much for being with me today.
Hi, Sonal. Thank you so much for having me. And hi, everyone.
So, just to give a brief background, so Kate, you're the founder of thegoodbusy.com. You're a productivity and leadership coach, specifically or mainly targeting the middle managers. And why you are so key for my audience is that majority of my spa to wellness leaders are middle managers in the hotel. So rarely do they have that seat at that big table. And what is interesting to see is many of these spa and wellness leaders have either held a receptionist position, so they've worked their way up the ranks, or a therapist. They've done amazing work. They've helped put out fires. They've really gone that extra mile and they have that well deserved promotion. But when they just reach that spa supervisor or wellness manager, they find it so difficult to get right up to that next level. That leap there requires more than just doing hard work. It requires strategy. And this is where I see so many wellness managers trip. And I think your advice is going to be so amazing for them. But before we go into more detail, tell us a bit about what you do exactly.
Okay. Before becoming a productivity and leadership coach, I worked in corporate roles myself, and I worked in hospitality as well for some time. But
I
now I'm
know we
working.
worked in the same company many moons ago.
Yes. And now I'm working, as you mentioned, with with managers to help them to free up time from busy work. Is that work that drains us, and so that they can focus on the work that excites them, bring value and progress, and so that also they can have time and life outside of work. Because honestly, I do love working, and I do believe that work brings a lot of fulfillment, and it's very underestimated. But we need to know how to work. We need to change the way we work today.
So true. And particularly now, in the last few years, we have seen such a change. I bet that's across all industries. And I've definitely seen that in wellness and hospitality. What have you noticed when it comes to middle managers? What have you noticed in these last few years?
Well, that's a great question. I think the first thing that not just I noticed, but everybody noticed are the layoffs,
Oh,
right?
yes.
These were everywhere. The headlines were everywhere. And the interesting thing about the middle management in the layoffs is that one third of the layoffs were middle managers. Because there is this idea that middle managers somehow create that bottleneck for the productivity, and that bottleneck is very costly. So we remove it. But the other interesting, curious thing is that when you look at the burnout, the group that experience the most burnout are the middle managers. 70% of middle managers say they've experienced burnout, right? And I've been a middle manager myself. I know how it feels to have that pressure from the top and all those demands from your team. Gallup did a research where it showed that 73% of the engagement of the team is on the manager shoulders. And that's a lot,
Yes.
right? That's a lot. And so, yes, bottlenecks, etc. But we need to be realistic about, there is the vision dictated from the top, but the work is done here. Vision is great, but the implementation is what creates that success, right? And the people who are responsible for that implementation, for most of it, are those middle managers, right? So that's quite interesting. And there's a lot of conversation of flattering structures today about creating those self-management managing teams. And I agree that that's an option, but can it happen from one day to another? I think it's very, very tricky. And I have a few thoughts on why it's tricky.
So where do you see? I mean, it's an interesting point you've brought. There has been huge layoffs, and now probably middle managers are being reintroduced without that training. Then, as you said, 73% of what is like engaging the team is on their shoulders, and they're not prepared for it. They don't physically have the time sometimes, and it gets too overwhelming. And this role is so key going forward, even if we try to flatten the structure.
Yeah.
But I just think in hospitality, we need another 100 years for that to happen. It's still a very hierarchical structure. The GM is still god or goddess, no matter what, no matter how flat that organization might be. And I don't think that will change anytime soon. So, how do you see the role of middle management progress, let's say going now to the short, mid, and long term? um what is their role, and how are they going to have to empower themselves, or what kind of flags do you see on their road?
I think the flags that we've seen, I mean, I spent 15 years in a corporate roles, and the flags that we've seen before are still surprisingly the same flags that we see today and going forward. You've mentioned something earlier. So they've been putting out a lot of fires. There were a lot of in operations. It was all about doing, doing, doing. And then they got that promotion. And today they realize that probably what got them here won't get them there,
Oh,
right?
yes.
But, and that's something you've just mentioned as well, this word preparation. Nobody prepares them for what's next, right? They got that role because they truly deserve it, but they were not prepared. Again, another Gallup, I think it was again Gallup's study that showed that 90% of new managers say that they feel not prepared for the role. And I've also heard an interesting fact this week. I attended an event, and they said that it takes us up to 6 years to get actually comfortable or confident in that manager's role. But who has 6 years? Nobody
No,
has
no.
6 years, right? And a lot of people are in those roles, but they feel absolutely unprepared. And that's why they struggle a lot. They struggle, as you mentioned, with time. They don't find time to do the important work, the strategic work, because they're still doing that other work that can be done by other people. And they're doing a lot of work that shouldn't be done. I'm sure that's a case for wellness managers and spa managers as well. Reporting. I mean, reporting takes huge amount of work in terms of middle management work. But is all of that reporting necessary? Is that impactful for the strategic decisions, for the growth, for the progress, right? So I think that I agree with you. We can talk about flattening structures, but I don't think that the problem per se are structures. I think that the problem is the work we invest our time and effort into. We are too busy doing work that doesn't create impact because it's easy work. It's low effort, so why not? We're going to do it. And that takes time. But it creates that illusion of we're productive, right? But it doesn't create value. And all we I mean, we all need the same thing. We all need that recognition for the value and quality work that we've created, because time is the most precious resource that we have, and nobody likes to waste time. Nobody likes to feel that they were useless or worthless, right? But how do we educate people to choose the quality work? How do we educate them to be good busy, right? And that's that preparation that is missing. And it was missing before, and it's still missing today. And I really hope, I truly hope that we can change it in the future, because middle managers are crucial. They are like the engine of your car. And if you're not taking care of your engine, it's not going to go far, right? I always love, I have a background in sports as well. I played tennis for 10 years. So I love to always think of and bring examples of athletes. Just think of a football team, right? Can you imagine a coach throwing in a team player who was not prepared for the championship? They don't do that, but we throw unprepared people in business, and they swim on their own, and hopefully they will not drown. So I think the role of middle management is very important because it's the link between the vision and the reality, what's happening on the ground. But it's a very harsh role. It can be really brutal. And we need to not just prepare people, but to provide that regular support to them. We have all our support systems, friends, family, hopefully we all do, and we're blessed to have them. But it's not enough because these people don't spend enough time with us at work. And also it's not fair to them. It impacts that relationship when we bring a lot of that stress and weight home,
Yeah,
right?
it's a
So that support is
catch-22
fundamental.
situation. And you brought up some very interesting subjects, going back to what you were saying, that reporting takes so much time, and guilty as charged in the spa in the wellness industry, as you have regional corporate heads of wellness wanting their spa directors to come up with a whole gamut
Yeah,
of data for their analysis. But what they forget is many of these wellness managers aren't hardwired to come up with reporting. They don't know how to calculate half of that information. Some of them don't even know how to properly use an Excel sheet. So they waste their time doing something they're not cut out to do. That also, they don't do
yeah,
an accurate job. And top of that, while they're trying to please, and they have to in such a hierarchical structure, their corporate heads and their regional heads, what ends up happening is, you said, there's like, we have the KPIs, key performance indicators. We measure so much rubbish KPIs. As
absolutely.
I'm like, one needle moving activity. And I just tell
Yeah,
them, what is compared to total hotel revenue, what revenue are you giving? Just work on that. And but that requires, as you mentioned, that training. And another key thing you mentioned is that, these people are just thrown into the deep end, sink or swim. And if you sink, someone else they'll throw in. But the problem is the people who are above them, they weren't trained either. So you can't train on something you didn't know.
yeah,
And you probably still don't know because you wouldn't be asking your teams to waste, you won't be sending them down a rabbit hole.
good point.
So this is something that so resonates with our industry. And I'm sure you see it happening across the board, across all industries. So when you go into work with these people, how do you untangle them from the situation? So this pleasing and wasting time trying to report because you want to learn something new, you want to learn the skill of finance, but it's not very useful. And also other people above you who probably weren't trained and they're the ones training you. So how do we untangle ourselves from that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I like the use of word untangle because the number one advice that I always give to them and I ask them to work on, and I think that this is the biggest investment that you can make in yourself today, is to learn that skill of asking questions
Hmm.
and asking more questions. We do not ask enough questions in the workplace. Just as your example, KPIs in wellness industry, I'm sure there are too many. I mean, I've been there, I've done all of those KPIs, but uh, in every industry, there are so many KPIs. Once I was asked to fill in my KPIs for a dashboard for general managers. I've opened the dashboard and they already had 35. I was scared to add five more because what's the focus, right? And so I think because we don't ask enough questions, we just take the work because we were told to do it and we just run with it, right? We are doing a lot of work that shouldn't be done. And by asking questions, first of all, you learn to say yes more slowly. You're not jumping into the task. Secondly, it's actually a massive win-win because everybody's busy, everybody's overwhelmed, everybody's in the chaos, right? And we are frustrated because we're thinking, oh my God, why are they asking us this? But the fact is, your manager is not enough aware that it doesn't make sense. So asking a question, what is the purpose of this report? what is the objective that we're trying to reach by calculating this KPI or investing in a campaign to drive this KPI, right? That makes that person think. It makes them more aware of the ask that they put in front of you. And so that becomes the collaboration. That becomes the dialogue. That becomes the conversation that today we're still missing. 50% of all that busyness that we're busy with is lost in translation because we don't communicate. We talk, we say things, right? But we don't communicate. We don't ask questions, then listen, then ask questions again, then listen again, then dig deeper. And I think this is the fundamental skill that everybody needs to learn if they want to truly deliver valuable work today and to slow down a little bit. It truly helps you to slow down. Just imagine, those high-speed trains, woof, woof, woof. You don't see anything. That's the reality at work. But when you go on the bicycle, you kind of like, you can speed up, you can slow down, you can reroute yourself a little bit, you can pause, observe. So that's the idea of the true productivity. It's really not about doing more, 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 and more. It's really choosing those impactful things. Just very simple tip, 80-20, the Pareto principle, right? That I hope many people know. And if not, they will learn today. So,
You know, one could argue that many middle managers are probably scared to ask their regional head. Again, hospitality is a very hierarchical
yeah,
industry. It's rare that you would find a middle manager dare. Again, depends on location, depends on your culture, but I can only imagine somewhere in Asia, um, an Asian wellness manager challenging, her European wellness leader. I don't know if that would be, I mean, well received. That what is the objective of this? What is the purpose of this? And sometimes many answers are, we're doing a study. So this information is very important for us.
yeah.
And how can they tackle those kind of situations?
I want to pick up on something that you mentioned. You mentioned challenging. I think that's the mindset that we need to change. We're not challenging, we're having a conversation. I'm
Yes.
not asking a question because I'm challenging your knowledge or the strategy. I want to understand because by understanding, I can do a better work. I can give you exactly what you want. Because instead of me going and pulling out 200 reports with 300 KPIs, I'm going to give you exactly what you're looking for. That actually helps me to be more productive and be more focused in my work. And I think that's the mindset that we need to change because a lot of fear comes from that is that, well, there is the hierarchy, so I can't ask a question. Well, no, you can, but it's how you ask the question. One of the tips that I give to people is say, first of all, ask for permission to ask a question. Don't just throw in there, what's the goal of this? Right? What are we trying to achieve? Ask permission. Is it okay if I ask a few questions to help me understand the task better so that I can deliver better quality work? 99%, if not 0.9, the answer to this question is going to be yes. So you have a green light to ask all your questions that you need, right? And instead of using the why questions, ask the what and the how questions. How is it going to help us in achieving our goal? Or how is that a bigger priority versus, this report or this task that I received yesterday, for example? That's just about having those conversations and really just changing the mindset. It's truly not about challenging. It's about communicating and understanding each other.
And, many times when you find middle managers, they want to please, they want to shine. As you said, no one likes to be thought of as someone or their time was useless or worthless, right? They want to have added value. They want their time to have been of use. Everyone aspires to that, right?
Yeah.
And when it comes to, for example, pitching something, so let's say you're here 2 to 3 years in your middle manager position and you've plucked the courage to, like in the wellness in our industry, go to the general manager and pitch them something. What kind of skills do they need to develop so that when GMs are, or any upper level management, when they're going to consider decisions, when someone, a middle manager is bringing a pitch, what kind of information are they looking for?
That's a very good question. The first skill I'll definitely recommend is building the CRM skill. It's the client relationship building, right? I would say that we need to, or I would recommend to stop looking at the GM as the boss, but look at the GM as a customer. You are selling something to that person that you believe in. So how do you sell to customers? First, you build a relationship, right? So if the GM has never seen you and you're going to pitch, first of all, the GM will never find any time for you because who are you, right? But building that relationship and bond, connecting on something. In my previous line of work, which was CRM, we were teaching our salespeople, and I was working in retail, but also when I was in hospitality. So butlers, for example, building that relationship with clients is finding out what makes them tick, right? If they have a favorite coffee, many GMs live in countries that are not their home countries. Where are they from? So you build that connection. How do you build that? Through questions. Do you ask them directly to the GMs? Yes, when you have the opportunity. But if not, you ask to people who know the GM. And plus, you also have internet today, right? So that having that curiosity mindset, that will help you build that first and do that first step, because people buy from people they like.
Yes,
People
so
promote
true.
people they
So
like.
true. We don't like to see that, if we think we're in a very equitable kind of hierarchy. We're humans at the end.
We are humans. Decisions are emotional. So we need to understand how we take the decisions. That's the second part, right? So the second part is, first of all, there is that emotional part of the decision, but when you get that person, you understand you will already have that. And then there is the second part. Here we complicate so much because we always think, what are the company goals and what do I need to sell? There is one for any commercial organization, including hotels, there is one goal: revenue. Okay. Nobody's going
Yes.
to pat you on the shoulders if you're going to achieve thousands of KPIs, but you didn't achieve your revenue. So revenue and even better profits, that what counts the most. But you need to, so people at that level speak numbers. They speak relationship and then they speak numbers. Because in order for you to show those numbers, you need to have that relationship, that proximity first. And those numbers, you need to show how are you contributing to that revenue, just as you mentioned in the beginning. One of the things, it's the percentage of the revenue, but I also think, and in my experience, not just professional, but also personal, sometimes people select hotels because of the wellness center in the hotel. And sometimes even just because of that one therapist that works in that wellness center. So partner with your CRM managers, because big hotels, for example, have CRM managers that can help you understand. For instance, you could see that people who are actually going to wellness centers, maybe they are returning customers. And you can see that link between, returning customers, room revenue, F&B revenue, and actually and connection to the wellness revenue, right? So when you show that connection, people are going to listen to you and you're going to get your seat at the table. But you have to find and connect those dots. And that's the second skill that you need to invest in. It's data, understanding how data works and telling the story with that data, the story that GMs resonates with GMs. And what resonates is that story will bring and drive revenue.
I love that. Say that again, Kate. Treat your GM as another customer. Build that relationship. Be curious. It's a curious mindset. Understand what makes them tick. Once you've built that relationship, you're trying to sell them something, but you need to back yourself up by data, real data that speaks the language. And actually, in all hotels, really in the booking system, you click book and you know whether that client is a return client. You know where they've spent money. And
Yeah.
if you don't know how to use that system, there is a whole army of CRMs. All the front
Yeah.
desk people will give the time of the day. Get that information. And as you said, build that story around that.
Correct.
That's excellent. This is a great teaching. Great, great, great teaching. And what other tips can you give our wellness managers? So something like that is like a big domino effect. You are creating that relationship. We just underestimate how important it is to build relationships. So, and as you mentioned earlier on, what got us here won't get us where we want to. That hard work got us to the middle manager, and we needed to do that. Now, it doesn't mean we stop working hard, but now we have to work smarter. And that is understanding the role. What exactly are we doing and not becoming that bottleneck? So, what advice could you give our wellness managers who have to cover reception or jump in and cover a treatment, plus do all that strategy that they've not been trained to do? And they're at that verge of burnout thinking, what? I'm earning less than when I was a therapist and I am just miserable. And even my family's miserable because I'm miserable. What what words of wisdom could you give them?
I think the number one nugget of wisdom that I'll give to them is that there are always going to be trade-offs. No work is perfect, right? But we need to understand, what are we aiming for? There are people, as you say, they're aiming high. They want to go up, right? They want to get that seat at the table, and that's great. And there are people who just want to be very happy at where they are, right? So everything starts with, what are you aiming for? What is your end goal? What do you want? And based on this, you can, first of all, click pause to review actually your work. Because again, back to the Pareto rule, 20% of what you're doing are going to get you what you want, but you have to know what you want. 80% of people do not set goals at all. And in hospitality, as in many other industries, we set goals once a year, right? When we talk about professional goals, and we never go back to them until the next performance review. And so that having that pause is fundamental. Otherwise, we are continuously on that speed train. And so have that first, identify what do you want, and then click pause and review everything that you are doing and see the impact. Is it getting you closer, or is it not getting you closer to what you're actually trying to achieve? But doing that, remember there are going to be trade-offs, right? So situations like replacing the therapist, or when your favorite client comes in and they ask you, no, I still want you, and you still have to do the work, that's a trade-off. But that's a trade-off that is going to get you probably where you want to be, right? Because that client might be talking one day to the GM, because GMs talk to the clients, right? And that client might mention your name, and that might be your ticket to where you want to be, if that's, the table, the seat at the table. So it's really understanding and taking the time to review. We are rushing too much, we're sprinting. And that pause will really help you understand what is the work that is bad busy, so no impact on where you want to go, and what is the work that has a lot of impact without good busy.
I like that. I think, those trade-offs, we don't, I hadn't thought of it that way. But yes, I mean, if you are a therapist, you will jump into the trade. I mean, everything has a trade-off. And instead of, I think many times we have that image that, okay, we've been promoted to manager. Now we should no longer need to train, or we should no longer need to jump into the treatment room, or we should no longer need to go and pick up towels from the changing rooms or cover reception because someone's calling in sick and no one else wants to cover. I think, as you mentioned, instead of viewing it as you're missing out on all the good bits because you're being dragged down, it's more like this is a trade-off. This is the price I pay, but that will actually get me a step closer to whatever my goals are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think another thing that I would like to add here is, especially for wellness centers and within the hotels, treat it as if you were an entrepreneur, as if it was your own business. Would you be picking up the towels? You would, right? Because you know that's important. And would you be educating and emphasizing that to the team, for example, who hasn't done it or who hasn't done it correctly? Because we know that there are a lot of processes and operational procedures, right? You would. So treat it, if you want to go high, you have to treat whatever you do as if it was your own business, as if you were an entrepreneur.
And is there anything in, when we were having a conversation earlier on, um, you mentioned that you've obviously been in the hospitality industry and a very wellness oriented company, and you believe in wellness and you're a consumer of wellness. And in one of our conversations, I loved how you highlighted that you walk in, you're given a menu that's like, Jesus Christ, I need a doctorate to understand this.
Yeah.
Tell me more about, because sometimes, we get so stuck in what we want to do and want to offer. We want to put wellness's entire kitchen sink in. And then you come in, you want a fantastic treatment. You're happy to pay incredible money for that. And then you're like, it's one obstacle race after another to get what you want.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you know, I think we try to impress too much instead of trying to solve the need. I think that anyone who goes to spa or a wellness center, they don't have really a problem to solve. They have a need, a desire, right? So my desire usually, because we are tired, we work a lot. So when I go to a wellness center, I want to relax, and first of all, I want to get rid of that decision fatigue. I don't want to take a decision. And yet when I arrive and I see that a long list of services and treatments, but also the naming that is so complicated, as you said, that it requires a doctor's degree to understand, I give up. And I came for one need, but actually I get more tired by looking at the menu, right? And it also, there's another thing that I will often notice when there are two people at the reception. One is taking care of me, and the other one is still working, and there are a lot of papers there. And that gives me also a feeling of, well, we're running an operations. It's not a sanctuary, right? But I'm coming there because I want to feel like I'm in a sanctuary. And so that at the main thing, I know that we are very focused in hospitality, in wellness in general, on the processes, but it's not because the process was developed even last year that it shouldn't be reviewed, right? And you can review it with newcomers, with clients, ask questions, right? Because we all have blind spots, and asking questions really helps us to see things that we don't see originally, but other people do, and it impacts their experience.
And to start closing this fantastic conversation, we could chat for hours and hours. What, when we go from bad busy, so wasting our time just on doing stuff that doesn't really have an impact, and we go to good busy, how how does that transform, or how does that change the lives of middle managers?
Well, first of all, you're still going to be tired, so I'm not going to tell you that you're not going to be tired. But I think there is a huge difference between being tired and being burnout. And I think the word burnout is overused today because everything feels like a burnout. But when you are good busy, you have that energizing tiredness, right? That at the end of the day, it's like, imagine that you have a glass of water. So during the day, you're actually pouring the water, that's your energy and your time, into different tasks, into different people. But then, because you get results and you create value, that pours back into your glass. And although you are tired, you're still feeling fulfilled. And that's the key difference, I think, between the good and the bad busy. It's how we feel at the end of the day. Whenever we are just busy and doing whatever work, and at the end, it didn't create any value or progress, just on value part, it doesn't have to be complicated. Value is very simple. Was it useful to someone else or not? If it's not useful, there's no value, right? And that's the difference. Good busyness creates that value. It is work that is useful. It is work that is going to be used by others to do their work or to take important decisions to help the company progress and get to their goal, right? And that's the difference. That's the difference how you're going to feel at the end of the day. And because of that feeling, you're going to find time and energy for your life outside of work, right? You're going to feel fulfilled and rewarded at work, and you're going stop missing out on the thing that matter to you and the memories that you want to create outside of work. I think that's for me the huge difference. And I've experienced both. I've experienced bad busy and good busy. So I'm talking from not just working with people, working with leaders, but especially from my own experience as well.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. You don't take the fatigue out, but it's an energized fatigue that is
Yeah.
moving you close towards your goals and also to lead that fulfilled life.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Kate. I know my audience is asking if they want to get from bad busy to good busy, how can they reach out to you?
Very simple. LinkedIn, as you mentioned in the beginning, and thegoodbusy.com. That's the easiest way to find me.
Thank you so much, Kate. I could honestly speak for hours. It's so eye-opening and also thought-provoking what you shared. Thank you so much for your generous
Thank you.
time.
Thank you, Sana, for having me, and thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thanks.